Hi guys, Dan Malone here from MassLive.com alongside, for the last time this basketball season, Andrew Sear of Massachusetts Daily Collegian. We're here once again at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, where UMass just closed out its 2015-2016 season with a 15-point loss, 85-70 to VCU in the A10 tournament semifinals. This was a game that got out of hand pretty quickly in the second half. UMass went into halftime down only 9 points. And within a span of like 9 minutes, that lead got out to almost 30. UMass just kind of got blitzed coming out of the break. VCU doesn't play that havoc style as much anymore, but it certainly looked like they were getting that kind of pressure and forcing those turnovers and scoring those transition buckets. And it really just put UMass in a hole that they could never come back from. It looked early like they might be able to kind of hang around long enough to make a push late, but that really put them over the edge, and in that second half, I think a lot of people kind of saw the writing on the wall. This is going to be the last one.
They did, and I think when you look to that game, the first thing that sticks out to you is obviously the rebounding disparity that VCU had. They out-rebounded UMass 49-31, including 20 offensive rebounds to just 4 for the Minutemen.
20 offensive rebounds is a lot.
Yeah, exactly, and that was 50 points in the paint, 17 second-chance points. You just look to that game, and VCU dominated inside. All season long, UMass, as we all know, has been led by their guards, Dante Clark, Trey Davis, and Jabari Hides. But today you could really tell the lack of the depth in the front court really hurt them. Mo Alley Cox, Tillman, the two of those guys were just crushing UMass on the board. They were just ripping balls out of guys' hands, and just from that standpoint alone, VCU was clearly the more dominant team in this game. They were way more rested than the Minutemen were coming off that game against URI last night. Not much you could do if you were UMass. A little bit, they kept it close a little bit in the beginning of the game, but like you said, after that run to start the second half, I think they went on scored like 11 of 13 points or something like that to start the second half.
Yeah, it was like they went 13-2, and then that was like 19-4 or something like that. It was bad. Like you said, the rebounding was a huge part. UMass, because of the way their team is built, that was going to be a struggle for them all year. Rashawn Holloway scored 16 points. I mean, he did some good things on the offensive end, but there just wasn't a whole lot of help inside. You mentioned Tillman. He's a guy who didn't play in that first UMass game back in February. The UMass won. He played 7 minutes and he got hurt. Tonight he scored double digits and he pulled down a bunch of rebounds.
10 and 9.
Yeah, I mean, UMass didn't really have an answer for that, and I thought they played well defensively to kind of start the game there. Just not enough was falling. UMass looked really disjointed offensively. It seemed like they were just kind of dribbling around. I mean, they do that a lot, but it seemed like even tonight was even more so, where they normally have some athleticism where they can get into the lane and put up some shots, create free throw opportunities or layups. VCU has some athleticism of its own and some length that, I mean, Dante Clark specifically looked like he was kind of lost trying to get into the paint a lot of times, and UMass didn't get off to a super hot start, and that second half start really killed them. And so, the season's over. They won a game in Brooklyn, which is more than I think a lot of people thought they were going to. They finished the year at 14-18. That's a disappointing record in that they won 17 games last year, and 2 years ago they're in the NCAA tournament. But this was always going to be kind of a bridge year. They relied heavily on on a couple seniors and Trey Davis and Jabari, who Trey Davis finishes with 20 points in his finale. Jabari finishes with 16. So I think a lot of fans will look back at this season as disappointed, and they'll want to move on from this as quickly as possible with those guys coming in next year. So it'll be interesting to see what we think about this year, 5 years down the road. But this UMass team was frustrating to watch and inconsistent, and I think they played that way all the way through the end in this game.
Yeah, and you knew coming in this year it was going to be a transition year, especially with the lack of depth they had, especially in that front court, like we mentioned earlier. But I think one of the biggest storylines you guys got to keep an eye out for leading into 2016-2017 is Rashawn Holloway, because we've seen glimpses of where he can really be a dominant player, both in the post and just rebounding, especially because a guy his size, demands attention, demands the ball in the post. He's the biggest guy in the whole building every time he shows up to a game. And when you just look to him, is he going to be able to stay in shape? Is he going to be able to discipline himself with his diet, with his exercises? And that's something that Holloway is very upfront about. He knows that's his biggest issue.
Derek Kellogg, too,
Yeah, the two of them know. In his progression, along with Malik Hayes, if he can come along too, those two guys in particular are really going to have to be big parts of this team moving forward. But like you said, tough year for UMass in terms of their own expectations, especially when they made that tournament run a couple of years ago. I expect this to be a small blip in the radar. I think they're going to come back. They have a top 25 recruiting class next year. And if you're UMass fans, I think you kind of knew that this was going to be a bridge year almost. And while in terms of college sports, there's no really bridge years, especially because you only have guys for 4 years. I think that the future is definitely brighter than this past season.
Yeah, they got some good talent coming in. It'll be interesting to see what that front court looks like with Bryson Gresham and Chris Baldwin. I agree with Holloway. I'm excited to see what he looks like next year, especially if he gets in shape. But on the other end of the spectrum, I'm disappointed. I'm sad to see a guy like Trey Davis go.
Yeah.
Tyler Bergantino too. Those two, on a personal level, for me as the beat writer for Mass Live, those two were the last players on this team that were here before I got here.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like a watershed moment for me. I think it's going to be a watershed moment for a lot of fans. I just wrote this story about Trey Davis and how I think this is kind of an end of an era where he was one of those guys who played in the NCAA tournament. He finished 17th all time in scoring. He is statistically the best free throw shooter in UMass history. He's a guy who did a lot with a career that I don't think people expected. His name is going to show up high up on some record books just because of how many games he played. And he was always there, and now he's not going to be. I think it's going to be a little weird moving into next year.
Yeah, and he also has that Malone record. You saw 40
he does.
points.
He had some high highs.
He did. And with Davis, a lot of times you kind of watch him play and you see him taking this unorthodox shot. You're like, no, what are you doing? And then it goes in from 10 feet behind the line. He's just one of those guys that, from a basketball fan's perspective, he's going to be fun. It's going to be hard not to see him play. He's a very fun guy to watch. Anytime he steps the floor, you always have to keep an eye on him because he can pull from anywhere. Like you mentioned, on a personal note, great guy to talk to. Was always one of the
interesting quote.
Yeah, very interesting quote. Always a guy that treated us with respect, along with all those seniors. Derek Kellogg mentioned his press conference. He was very happy. The kind of men he had in his program, not just basketball players, but people outside of basketball. And I think that the two of us, Matt, Anthony, the other beat writers, could really attest to that. They were very classy with us, and I think that despite a year that featured so many struggles for them, they were very professional about it. And like you said, it's going to be disappointing. I'm going to miss these videos with you, Dan.
I know. We're done for basketball. Maybe we'll do one come spring football game out of McGurk, but that's not for another month. So I guess it's so long for now. Thanks for watching throughout the season in our little videos here. Sear, thank you very much.
No problem, Dan. Thank you for having me. I hope you enjoyed our floating heads all year.
Definitely. And we'll catch you next time, whenever next time is.